Uh, next, we will have Reverend Jarrett Washington.
Good afternoon and God's blessings to all of you. I'm the Reverend Jarrett Britton Washington. I am candidate number 382, and the word that best describes me is future thinking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next, we will move to candidates for the office of Treasurer CFO, beginning with Miss Nora Kajita Stevens. We're sending your request right now. Go ahead. Name, number, one adjective.
Okay, first of all, I'm just going to say my name is Nora Kajeta.
Kajeta, excuse me.
Kajeta Stevens, yes. And my number is 341. And what I would use as an adjective to describe me is servant. I have a servant's heart.
Okay, thank you. Is Dr. Henderson here? I know he was traveling. Okay, I don't think so. Let's see. Okay, no, he's not here. He's traveling. All right, next we'll move to candidates for historiographer, executive director, Department of Research and Scholarship. Coming now to you, Reverend Dr. Cynthia McDonald.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Cynthia Parnell McDonald, excuse me. My number is number 390, and I believe that the word that best describes me tonight is intentional.
Well, thank you. She is the only candidate joining us, correct? Yes, okay. Next, we will move to Executive Director of the Department of Retirement Services. Coming live to you.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Blackwell. My number is 350, and the adjective that I would use to describe me is serious.
Your face says it all. I agree. I agree. All right. Now, because we love you and we trust in God, we are going to shoot it over to Brother Timothy Cousin for the prayer. And then we'll get started with the hard part.
Let us look to the Lord in prayer. Father God, we thank you this evening for bringing us all here together. And Lord, we thank you for the opportunity of fellowship so that we can get to know one another. And thank you for the opportunity to learn more about the candidates who have offered themselves for service in your church. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Cousin. All right, Brother Moderator, let's go. It's your turn.
All right. So each candidate will be asked a question, and you will have 2 minutes to respond. After the 2-minute mark, you will be respectfully muted. So again, each candidate will be asked a question, and then after 2 minutes, you will be respectfully muted. And we say that in love. We still love you. Just know that.
Lots of love. Lots of love.
All right. You want me to kick it off, Jameis, or you want to go ahead?
Go for it.
All right. All right. So this question goes to the candidates for the Office of CIO, Chief Information Officer, General Secretary, to Reverend Tyronda Burgess. In what ways do you envision the integration of technology in modern communication methods? And we'll get you unmuted here in a second.
Thank you, Brother Satterwhite, for unmuting me. Technology is critical in our world right now. And moving toward the Office of the General Secretary, there are so many opportunities for us to engage technology in the work. As we move to General Conference right now, an electronic roll call, just scanning into General Conference saves us probably 45 minutes with that roll call. Just being able to employ technology there. Using AI for things like translating our documents into other languages, engaging technology in our local congregations, in our local settings, certainly with social media being there. There are all types of opportunities for us to engage technology. Really, I don't think that we can be successful in growing our church without engaging technology in the work of ministry and in the work of church. And so those who are afraid of technology are the ones that are really becoming obsolete as it relates to ministry and going forward with that.
Thank you so much. Reverend Washington, I'll ask you the same question. In what ways do you envision the integration of technology and modern communication methods?
Thank you so much for the question. One of the things that I am very understanding of is that information is the currency of today. And so because information is the currency of today, it is my understanding that we would continuously use technology in the Office of General Secretary, Chief Information Officer to really bring the connectionalism to the AME Church. What I mean is connecting us in such a way that everyone receives a rapid delivery of their minutes, utilizing AI, utilizing cloud-based operating systems, also utilizing social media and harnessing our technology in such a way that everyone in the entire AME Church feels connected on every level. What I do know is that I've had the opportunity to use technology in the Office of Annual Conference Secretary and CIO for my Episcopal District. And so I know that we're able to use those items, use those things to help us push forward the message of African Methodism, the mission and the ministry. And again, by utilizing all of the things that are at our fingertips to help us be where we need to be. So I appreciate that question because, again, I am future thinking and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jamesha?
Absolutely. All right, Reverend Washington, this one is for you as well. Oh, you muted yourself. Let me get that. How do you see this office evolving?
Thank you so much for that question, Jamesha. I see the evolving of this office in quite a few ways. But one way that I think is important to you all as the young adult representatives and RAYAC of our church, which I believe are not just the future of our church, but really those who are in our church right now doing the work, is how we can incorporate the young adult presence and the component ministries in the Office of the General Secretary. Many of you know that the General Secretary is responsible for the minutes, the role, and also having a General Secretary staff at the General Conference and the General Board. What I will use is the component leadership, the secretaries from each component, to be a part of the General Conference General Secretary staff, which means that the young adults will have a voice not just at the table, but they'll actually be doing the work. And so I feel like this office has the ability to evolve in such a way that it incorporates all of the component ministries of our church, bringing about that level of connectionalism that will help to harness the future that we seek in the AME Church. So I do appreciate that question. Thank you.
Absolutely. Same question for you, Reverend Burgess.
Thank you so much for that question. Interestingly enough, when we start talking about the evolution of the department, the Office of the General Secretary, I think getting back to the original intent and purpose of the department serves our church well. When we look at the General Secretary's office, it really is where 2 million individuals serving in 7,000 local congregations in our 20 Episcopal districts on 5 continents in 39 countries. The Office of the General Secretary is the place where all of that becomes one church. We're one church in 7,000 locations. It is the place where our data, where our numbers, where our statistics are housed. And it is the place of connection for our congregations. We take all of our local congregations and we connect them in the Office of the General Secretary. Certainly, there are ways that we can do that more efficiently through technology, through engagement, through social media, but really getting back to the original intent of the General Secretary's office, that central communication come out of the office, that the sharing of our meeting minutes and the organization of our minutes, all of that comes from this location where we centralize the work of our church. We are the central hub for the church. And so getting back to the original intent of the office, I think moves our congregations and our churches forward.
Thank you for answering our question. We do appreciate it. Moving next to the office of historiographer. This one's for you, Reverend Cynthia. What measures will you implement to assess the effectiveness of your initiatives aimed at young adult recruitment, inclusion, and retention? And how will you adjust your approach based on feedback and evaluation?
Thank you very much for that question. As a young adult, as one who is under 45, I believe that I have a very unique position in that I have a unique position because I understand the challenges of young adults. Being a mother, being a pastor, being a bivocational, being a young adult, I understand the challenges of my peers, what we face to be leaders and to serve as a meaningful voice in the church, how we navigate traditions, how we are trying to find our place in the midst of established leadership, balancing our spiritual growth within the pressures of modern life. This is all something that I seek to address as I'm very intentional in incorporating the lives of us as young adults into this position. And so as historiographer, I would love, and I'm committed to including young adults in the preservation and interpretation of our church's history, because it's absolutely amazing when we look back at our history, how impactful young adults have been to the AME Church. And so I'd love to partner with RAYAC to actually discover more of its history. And not only that, allow, of course, young adults to be a part of the team, of course, and be a part of the journey. One thing I think is very important in this position is being a good listener. And so, yes, I have a plan, and yes, I'm very intentional about that plan, and yes, I have a vision for the department, but I think listening is important, and that's how we incorporate diverse voices into the department. And so in listening and understanding that, yeah, I have a plan, but yes, the plan can change, and the plan can succeed, and we can listen to those diverse voices because they are gifts and blessings to us in order to do the work of God. In all of that, I believe that incorporating a young adult agenda and making sure that the voices, the diverse voices of all are met. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but the timer went off. Thank you for that. We have one more question for you, but I also want to let all of our viewers know that please utilize the chat feature to ask candidates questions that you may have. Candidates, pay attention because you may have some questions lingering there for you. Okay. You ready, Satterwhite, or you want me to keep going?
You're doing so well with
I know.
Look
at me.
animations
I'm doing great.
and stuff.
Amen.
I can go. All right, Reverend McDonald, how will you ensure that the values and traditions of the AME Church are preserved and upheld while simultaneously adapting to the evolving needs and preferences of younger generations?
And so in order to make sure that our records and our history are preserved, as well as speaking to future generations, we have to understand that the role of historiographer in the AME Church is nothing short of a dynamic powerhouse, because it's a position at the very heart of the church's intellectual and spiritual legacy. And so with that, as the official guardian of the church's rich history, of course, I will preserve and of course, I will archive our history, but the historiographer is not just a keeper of records. The department is a strategic mind. It is a visionary storyteller. It is the think tank of the church that shapes how the church remembers its past, but also shapes how the church imagines its future. And so you use history as a roadmap, just not something to just, tell the story and pull out during church anniversary just to tell people about your history, but you teach through your history and you begin creating and developing and reimagining your future. so that it speaks to future generations. We have to remember, as my platform states, history is now more than ever. And so it's very important to keep copious records of what we are doing now, because as we do what we do now, at some point it will be the history to future generations. And so keeping those records, being meticulous about those records, and being intentional about being strategic with that history, being a visionary storyteller, and functioning as the think tank of the church, I believe, shapes our how we remember as well as shapes our future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Stevens. Oh, I love the timer. Ms. Stevens, how would you promote financial literacy among young adults, clergy, and laity in the church, ensuring they understand the importance of stewardship and financial responsibility?
Well, it really starts at home. I am the superintendent for the Eastern District of our the Baltimore Annual Conference, the church school superintendent. And we have so many wonderful things that we do with the children. But the first thing we do is we start them off with little banks. We make there's 3 little jars, and we talk to them about tithing, saving, and spending. And a lot of times people don't realize if you teach the children and they have to take it home, then they tell the parents. And so the parents are getting the lessons too. And so I personally give out some of my own personal money, and I'll give them money and I'll say, okay, you have $5. Tell me what you're going to do with each jar. I also like to explain to a lot of adults that if you can learn to live off of one salary, as soon as you get a raise, don't go and spend that on the next car or whatever that you need to buy. And so I use my personal life. I can't teach what I don't practice. And so you have to practice what you preach. And so when you're teaching the literacy, you first have to know it for yourself. And being a business teacher, I've already taught with spreadsheets. I talk to the young people. Sometimes I go to the different meetings here with our RAYAC work persons here. And I work with the young people all the time and teaching them and teaching the adults.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jamesha? You're muted.
Busy, the life of a boss back here. Okay, again for you, Miss Nora, how do you intend to maintain transparency and accountability in financial matters?
Well, that's not hard really well, it can be hard if I want to hide something. As a business teacher, the only way you can learn how to embezzle is you have to be taught how to embezzle. Okay, so you can do that. But the transparency is the fact that I've worked in the treasurer's office. I've seen some things that I would not do that I think should be done a different way. So I'm not going in blind, understanding that I don't know what's going on. But the transparency would come in with making sure that I have an open book. That open book being that we have colleges and universities, those monies have to be in on time. I need to make sure that I get reports to people. I don't like guessing, and I don't like not answering a question when a person tells me, if somebody says to me, okay, you owe me a report. Don't let me tell you next week, okay, I'll give it to you next week coming, it does not happen. I'm a stickler for a rule. I follow rules. And the rules of the discipline state what I'm supposed to do and what I'm supposed to present to those persons who I'm working for. And I'm working for the church. That is each and every one of you. And I have an obligation to make sure that I am accountable for the monies that I have not raised, because you have given me those monies to present and to take care of your church. So when you say treasurer, I mean, it's a glorified position, but I really haven't raised a penny. You all have. And I think we need to get back to that. The other part is having a treasurer's convention would really help with us understanding the process of what's going on. And being a full-time treasurer would enable me to share those gifts and talents with those in the church and each organization that has a treasurer. I would like.
Okay, we have one last question for you for now. You all who already went, be careful because we have more questions. So stay tuned. Don't doze off or anything. All right, so Miss Nora, are there specific partnerships or collaborations you plan to establish with other organizations or institutions to enhance financial support for youth-focused initiatives within the church?
Oh, yes, there's so many. I think, first of all, I am a grandmother and a mother. And so I want our church to sustain itself for my son, my grandson, well, who I raised, my grandson and my daughter and I have two grandsons and a granddaughter. But when I look at the future of the church, our children are the future, and they're so intelligent, and we have so many young people that have great ideas. I even look at how the treasurer works with the the chief informational officer. And so, you partner together and work together to support them. We have Boy Scouts, we have Girl Scouts, but we don't give them a lot of money and support in the things that they're doing. We have church schools. I want to make sure that when we start having general conferences, that we have like junior treasurers that can come to our meetings and feel like they are a part of what's going on in our Zion. We have to really reach out to our babies and stop waiting until they get grown, and then we want them to sit on the side and not bring them in. I enjoy working with young people. And there are so many of the young people that I have called when I was working in the finance department in DC. And we'll call them to my desk and say, come here. You can't do this that way. Let me show you what to do. But don't you tell nobody I showed you how to do this. Because if each one teaches one, then we all learn. And there's no I in the word team. It's not about me. It's about us. And we are a team. And Marcia and I worked on the membership card together. It wasn't just me by myself, but we worked on that together, and we incorporated something that really helped the church.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your response in the nick of time. The nick of time. Okay. As we do want to acknowledge that Reverend Dr. Mark Tyler has joined. And so we thank him for joining. We will direct some questions to you later on, but we're going to go with our format right now. No love lost here. Oh, we do need to know the rules, sir. So each candidate has 2 minutes. We will mute you in love, spirit of righteousness, if you go over that 2 minutes. And you'll have the opportunity to introduce yourself, name, number, and one adjective that describes you. Just to give him those instructions. Okay. All right. Next, we'll move to candidates for Episcopal Committee. Uh-oh. Don't get nervous. Don't get nervous. Okay. All right. I'm sending your request. Reverend Mayberry, coming at you. Yes, Reverend Doctor. All right. Are you ready? Unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself. Do you see it? All right, you got it. There you go. Okay, listen closely.
Okay.
How would you balance godly judgment versus pressure from the bishops and or their representative regarding Episcopal appointments?
Thank you so much for the question. One of the problems I think we have in the church is we've not been able to have people view each district as being a great district. the 20th district should be viewed as being as great a district as the 1st district. And that's because the people of God are a part of both districts. Balancing the godly judgment portion with pressure should never be a problem if, in fact, we learn how to help our salaried service at the highest level appreciate the role and responsibility they have as a servant. And so when we start and when we stop having people look for the next position before they've done anything with where they are, we're always going to have the problem of pressure and people trying to get us to do things that may not always be godly.
Okay. Look at you. You had a minute to spare. We appreciate that. We do. We do. We do. Okay. Reverend Lamar, same question. I'll repeat it for you. Coming. How would you balance godly judgment versus pressure from the bishops and or their representative regarding Episcopal appointments?
I think I'd like to take more of a realpolitik approach, and that is we do know that there are multiple pressures, but we also need to make sure that we do as people, those of you who are elected delegates, do not cede the authority you have to represent your district. So what that means is in the rooms where your Episcopal districts are meeting, it is your responsibility to make sure that the voices of the people check other pressures. There should be true democratic elections in each and every Episcopal district, not forced, not choreographed, but my opinion is a secret ballot in each and every Episcopal district where people's voices are heard, so that when the committee meets, there will be true democratic representations of the people's needs. Therefore, if the Spirit of God is in the mix, the will of the people is expressed democratically, and the Episcopal leaders express their desires, then we can get to a closer place of harmony and unity amongst the people. All voices, not just the voices of the leaders, but the people must take our responsibility to ensure that our voices are heard as well.
Okay, thank you for that response. The next question will be for you as well as Reverend Dr. Mayberry, but since you're here, we'll go ahead and ask you first. Please share your thoughts on legislation proposing the implementation of the 8-year law, in which the chairperson of the Episcopal Committee may only serve for 8 years before a new chair is elected. Uh-oh. Oh, you muted yourself. Okay. Hold on. Hold on. Where? Yes.
Thank you. It wouldn't allow me to unmute. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah, no, thank you. I believe that not just the Episcopal Committee chair, but it would be wise for none of us to have lifelong power. Lifelong power may be too much of a challenge for any human spirit to manage in a godly fashion. I am not against the 8-year rule that you only serve as chair of the Episcopal Committee for 8 years or on the general board for 8 years. But I think in all honesty, we need to ensure that everyone's term of service is not a lifetime term. I think it is to assume that we can check ourselves, maybe as foolish as assuming that the Supreme Court can check itself. So I am not against it. I do not seek power until death. I seek power to serve until others are ready to serve in their way.
Thank you, sir, for your answer. Oh, Reverend Dr. Mayberry, you are ready. You said I'm not going to mute myself.
Oh, no, I didn't mute.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Would you like me to repeat the question before you begin?
No, I think I have it.
Okay.
I think it's important to understand that the chairperson of the committee is elected by the people. When the people have determined that they're ready for another chair, they'll vote for another chair. But I do think it's important to always remember that it's as long as we have people on a committee who have experience working through that committee, it helps not only the committee, but the church as well. And so I think it's important to respect longevity, but it's also necessary to understand that other people do have the right to move into positions of leadership at the right time.
Thank you, sir. All right, and Brother Satterwhite will come in with his next question directed at you.
All right. We always hear the statement for the good of the church. And so when people say for the good of the church, what does that mean to you, Reverend Mayberry?
I think for the good of the church means doing what's right, not just for a particular district, which we've done too much in the past, but it's what's good for the entire connectional church. I think that requires us bringing together the collective ideas of the people across the districts to work toward establishing the idea of, I'm not going to work just for my district. I'm going to work for the entire church, which is what I believe the Episcopal Committee does and should always be doing. When the committee members come together, one of the things I've urged them to do is think about not just me, myself, my district, but work as 80 people unified for the good of the connectional church.
Thank you, sir. Reverend Lamar, same question. For the good of the church, what does that mean to you?
Well, it means to me that we understand that every voice is vital and must be heard. It means that we set an environment where intimidation does not stifle, arrest, manacle, or shackle the voices of anyone. To be completely honest, AMEs are always honest one-on-one or in small groups. But when we get to the meeting, before the bishop, before the person who wields authority, those of us who would be loud, cower, and are silent, we need to set an environment where people are not afraid to be honest, where people are not afraid to speak their truth. And I believe that, especially at this General Conference, we are a fragile organism, and we cannot at this point stand the kind of forced democracy or choreographed democracy. People must be free to speak loudly, because we do not have many more General Conferences to pretend like we are healthy, when in fact there are great challenges that are before us. And I know we can meet them, but we cannot cover that up any longer.
Thank you. Jamaica, did you have another question?
Maybe. Let's see. Yes, I do. This is for both of you. Would you continue to serve in the church if you were not elected to the position you have campaigned for?
I'll be glad to go first, Dr. Mayberry, if that's okay. What I have seen in the past when I have served in the committee when Dr. Mayberry won is the person who did not win served in the committee. And so while I go fully intending to win and to do the work of winning, I intend, if not elected, to go into the room and to serve as a valuable and a vital force and voice, not to obstruct leadership, but to be present and to do what is necessary to be a voice for the entire church. So no way would I say no to the church if the church says no to this position, because the church has said yes to me in so many marvelous ways.
Nice answer.
Dr.
Mayberry.
Okay, thank you. Yes, if I am not elected, I intend to use the experience that I have to work with the committee to help the committee do what's necessary for the good of the church. The General Conference has allowed me to serve several quadrennials as the chairperson, and I've worked hard to show the church I'm serious about my calling as a servant of the church. I will do everything I can to continue to make that known throughout African Methodism, because I believe the chairperson of the Episcopal Committee is an 8-day responsibility. but my commitment to God is a lifetime.
Amen. All right. Well, I think that's a great question for all of our candidates. So let's see who's not engaged. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. It's been a long day, so I'm like really bubbly tonight. So work with me here. All right. We'll go with Reverend Washington.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that question, Sister Jameisha. I believe the question is, if I were not to be elected, would I still be in service to the church? I want to share with each and every one of you on the line tonight that when I made the commitment, I made my commitment to God. And so if I am not elected the General Secretary of the AME Church, I will still serve as a secretary for my annual conference. I will still serve as the pastor of the Hopewell AME Church in Hemingway, South Carolina. I will still serve as the Chief Information Officer for the 7th Episcopal District, because I know that when God gifted me, when God gave me the desires of my heart to do the work that I've already been doing, that I knew that it wasn't for the acceptance of people, but rather it was for the kingdom of God. And so I'm so appreciative for this work. I have been working in this church for well over 25 years as a secretary. And so I'm so aware of the idea of the church, and I understand elections have consequences. And I understand that when we go forward in the church at the General Conference, that we will be seeking to find someone who can take the baton from Dr. Cooper and run with it. And so I'm appreciative for that question, because again, my service is to God and not just to the people.
All right, Miss Nora. Nora. I'm Southern, so I put a little twang on everything. So Miss Nora.
That's why everybody was calling me Kajetta. When I went to school in North Carolina, they said Nora. So they really hold it long.
Yes.
But listen, I have, when I say I have a servant's heart, truly, I don't know how not to serve. I served 15 years as a secretary with the Baltimore Annual Conference, 8 years running Bishop Richardson's office as his administrator in the 2nd Episcopal District, over 8 years working with the treasurer, Dr. Richard Allen Lewis, and just working in my local church. I have been a historiographer, been a lay member. I was capped by Mrs. Richardson as a missionary. I believe in our church, and this has been a call. It has not. I used to think preachers were crazy when they said that God called them to do something, but I had to apologize to all of you preachers, because this was a call. And I knew it was a call when I said to God, if in fact you want me to be the treasurer, I have to get a master's degree, and I have to get it in 1 year. And I went to Loyola College in Baltimore, Maryland, and I went to school for 1 year. And when I graduated, it shocked me, because I was like, look, I'm a little bit older. I've got to make sure these cobwebs are working. So to serve is what God put me here for. I want to serve God in this church. And when I stand before God, I want to make sure He says, you lived out your purpose, and your purpose was to serve me.
Thank you. We will next go to Reverend Dr. Mark Tyler. Remember, Dr. Tyler, 2 minutes to answer. You also must give your introduction. So name, number, and one adjective that describes you. So we'll give you the floor.
Well, so first of all, thank you so very much, and apologize for being late on this evening. We were locked in the Kamala Harris event as she was in Philadelphia making history. It would not let us out, but I'm certainly glad to be here. I'm the senior pastor of Mother Bethel AME Church, and for the last 16 years, I've really been serving and doing a lot of the things that I want to do as historiographer, but I want to now do that on a greater level, and to bring other people in the AME Church into some of the joy that we've had with regard to preserving our history. My number is 391. And I'll just simply say this, that, I mean, if you know me, then you know that history pretty much describes who I am. Whenever people talk about something historical, they just kind of laugh, because they know I'm going to be in the middle of it. And I was thinking about the last question that you posed to everyone else, if it's all right to
that's your question. Yes, that's your question.
Great. Absolutely. So I'll tell you not what I will do if not elected, but I'll tell you what I've done. So in 2008, actually ran for historiographer, and Dr. Dennis Dickerson prevailed. A few months later, to my surprise, I was sent to Mother Bethel as the pastor. And so I continued to do many of the things that I held up as campaign promises. When I see that old campaign card with the promises, many of those things we've been able to accomplish at Mother Bethel. Not all, but many. Because if you love something, you're going to find a way to do it. You don't have to have a position to do it. And I've been supportive of Dr. Dickerson when he was there, and Dr. Teresa Fry Brown as well. In fact, I encouraged her to run for the position, believing that she was the right person at that particular time. So I think that if you love this church, that you've got to be committed to it, whether you win an election or not. And I would certainly help anyone in the position if it's not me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your response. Coming now to Mr. Serious. You know what I'm talking about, Mr. Serious? There you go.
All right, same question.
Yes, sir. Same question. We have more for you, but we're doing a wild card right now.
Okay, well, thank you. Like so many of the other persons have responded, I did make a commitment to God. And when I did, I told God that I would use all of me, the spiritual part, the financial part, the organizational part. And if I'm not elected to be the executive director of the Department of Retirement Services, I'll continue to work. I've been the comptroller for the 9th Episcopal District for the last 14 years, treasurer for the 9th District's nonprofit. And I love being a pastor. That was one of the struggles with even choosing or deciding to run, is because I love being a pastor so much. And I would love to continue to be the pastor of St. Paul AME Church in Birmingham, Alabama. I believe that our service should not necessarily be about the position, but it should be about the people that you're serving and the work that you're able to do. And so as long as we're wrapped up within the will of God, we can continue to make a strong impact wherever it is that we are. So I'm not about titles, I'm not about positions, but I am about doing the work of God and using every talent and ability that God has given me in order to be productive wherever it is that I am. So I'll continue to work and I will continue to serve.
Thank you for your response. Taronda, you look like you're ready, so I'm coming at you. There you go.
Thank you so very much. I, like most of the others have shared, in when you all sent us the invitation to be a part of this, you asked us to introduce ourselves a little bit there. And I think in mine, I said, I love God, I love my husband, and I love my church. And so if I were not to be elected General Secretary, Chief Information Officer, my love for the church keeps me here. It keeps me serving, it keeps me doing, it keeps me moving. I have had so many opportunities, tremendous opportunities in this church to serve and to lead and to follow. And so I am truly grateful for the opportunity to serve. I've been the district administrator for the 10th Episcopal District, district administrator for the 13th Episcopal District, pastor, presiding elder. I am an elected officer in Connection of Women in Ministry. I've served there for 12 years. And I don't know what I would do if I could not serve and work in my church. So yes, I'll continue to serve as long as God gives me breath on this earth.
Amen. All right. From McDonald.
Thank you for that question. And so if I am not elected to the position, I understand for me that this is very much a calling that goes on if not elected. I will make sure that I also serve the church in whatever capacity possible. And so with that, I have worked in the Department of Research and Scholarship under Dr. Fry Brown for over 6 years. And so I know the work, I do the work. The work is a part of me and it will continue to go on. I will continue to serve as a grant writer and secure necessary resources for our church as I've raised over $3.5 million for clergy and lay members and to support young adults. I'll continue to nurture our future storytellers and continue to nurture our future researchers and really serve as the glue between the church and academia, to provide that vital foundation for scholarship that moves the church forward. And so with that, if I'm not elected, I look forward to continuing the work of combining the art of storytelling and history with the science of scholarship and making it one of the most influential and exciting positions within the church's leadership.
Thank you for your response. Reverend Dr. Mayberry, I want to make sure I did not skip you for this question. Have you responded? Yes, he has. Okay, you responded. It's okay. All right, we're going to go to Brother Marcus Henderson, who has joined us. I'm sending you a request. If you're able to speak, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, and greetings and salutations to all of my friends, all my family that is on this platform. Unfortunately, I'm traveling, and I am literally in an Uber headed to the hotel. I'm doing my continuing education credits to make sure that my license and everything stays where it should be to continue to serve the church as a fiduciary. I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm sorry that I will be participating at the forum that will be held in Columbus, Ohio. Looking forward to seeing everyone there. But I just wanted to pop on, tell you all to be careful, to travel safely, do all of the things that are necessary to protect yourself from COVID. We have a great meeting planned, and we're looking forward to celebrating our church and moving some things forward in God's way. God bless you. Be encouraged, and we'll talk soon.
Well, thank you. Appreciate you spending a little time with us. Okay, well, the wild card question has been answered. Of course, I have more because I'm a therapist, so I'm always ready. Nonetheless, we will move on to the Department of Retirement Services.
All right, Reverend Blackwell, what technical qualifications do you have to manage this department?
Well, I do thank you for the question. I have served in corporate finance for over 18 years. I've served as an internal auditor, a Sarbanes-Oxley compliance analyst, a senior financial analyst, a financial planning and analysis manager. I'm very familiar with large sets of data. I'm very familiar with record keeping, with preparing financial statements, and then also managing persons and running an office. I believe that a lot of the work that the office does is largely transactional at this point. And so the important thing is to be able to process transactions in an efficient way, but also putting metrics in place to be able to tell where there may be some gaps, where there may be chances to improve. I also spent a year as a process improvement director, where we spent a year looking at every department in our company and just thinking of different ways that it could work better. And so from a technical standpoint, I worked on the Commission of Retirement Services for the last 2.5 years, working with a lot of the financial data and working with the commission in order to facilitate a lot of the work that the office has been able to do. So I'm familiar with the operation. I do have some ideas on different things that can be done in order to make it more effective, more responsive, and more accountable to all of the participants of whom which we should be serving.
Thank you, sir. And then my last question for you from me would be, what are your thoughts on a group healthcare plan for clergy and lay employees of the AME Church?
Well, that would be awesome, because right now I'm on the Affordable Care Act, so I would love to have a group healthcare plan that I could be a part of myself. I think it is a great idea, and I think it is something that is worth pursuing. I know several districts have tried it. I know we tried it in the 9th Episcopal District, and I don't want to be one of those people that say that it didn't work last time, so it's not going to work before, not going to work again. But I think it's worth trying, because a lot of clergy do not have health care, or they're relying on their spouse to actually have health care. And so it's important for not only clergy, but all employees of the AME Church to have some measure of health care. The challenge will be making sure that everyone turns in their information. Everyone is honest about whatever the questions are being asked. But I believe that if we're able to establish a plan like that and then be able to leverage and spread the costs out over a wider base of both young and older persons, that we can keep the costs relatively reasonable, and it will be a blessing to not only the AME Church but to its members and employees.
Thank you, Jamisha.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, this question is also for you. What steps will you take to create mentorship and leadership development programs tailored specifically for young adults within the AME Church, with the goal of nurturing their spiritual and financial growth and encouraging their active involvement in church activities in this process of which we're getting ready to engage in now?
Well, I think one of the things that I think we have to do, particularly with this department, is to make it more transparent, allow for people to see what's going on, to see what's happening with their records, with their money, and then once you can do that, then you can build a level of trust that younger people and older people will be able to come in and rely on the expertise that you're able to share. I believe that everyone should have a mentor. Everyone should have someone that they can talk to, because as we all know, the AME Church has thousands of unwritten rules that nobody will ever tell you. And so one of the ways that we can get to the next level, both in the church and professionally, is to develop some level of mentorship. I believe that there are opportunities for even retirement services and other departments to get grants like Reverend McDonald was talking about, to make partnerships and to bring in professionals from other arenas in order to help mentor our young people in their own careers, so that the AME Church can be a place like the church used to be, where you went to the church for everything. You got everything from the church. You got a job referral from the church, and you maybe met your spouse at a church. So I think all of those things are important. And from the retirement services department, the biggest thing is going to be restoring the credibility. Once we can restore the credibility about whether or not what we say is what actually happened, then I believe that we can build a strong basis of allowing other people to get involved, bringing in our young people, teaching them about retirement and about the blessing of compound interest and various things that they can do, so that they're well ahead of where we are by the time they get to our age. So I think, and I'm 47, but I'm just saying, if I had started when I was younger, then I would be in a much better place. So I think mentorship and involvement, I think, is very important, because we could have future millionaires here if they just started when they were 21 as opposed to waiting until they're 40.
Thank you, sir, for your response. Okay, now I'm going off strip a little bit, because this question came to me last night in the shower, and I was like, who I was supposed to send it to them, but I totally forgot. So we're going to run this one through everyone, because we do have a little time, and then we will take questions from the chat. So, there are a couple of sayings when it comes to history repeating themselves or walking in the footsteps of our forefathers and such. I'm curious, if you know your predecessor's work, which initiative would you continue during your administration if you are elected? All right, now let's see who's tired. Okay. Oh, okay. Right here, Reverend Burgess, she said, I'm ready.
Thank you for that question. So the Office of the General Secretary has started a number of initiatives. We've passed them through the General Board, we approved them through General Conference, and somehow they've just not gotten off the ground. I think that the membership database is huge. I think that is enormous. If we can actually get the membership of our church to just fill out the gift inventory and to create the membership profiles online, that we actually have access to the 2 million members that we claim in the church. We actually had access to them at the stroke of a key. I think that would be amazing. It is, again, an initiative that was started under Dr. Cooper. Marcia and Reverend Annika Howard did the initial work to gather data. They tested it in some Episcopal districts, and it didn't go any further than that. And but it took roll-ups of information all the way from the presiding elder district, all the way up to from the presiding elder districts down to the local church. And that would be amazing information to have, to actually put names and gifts with these 2 million members that we boast throughout the church.
Well, thank you for your response. All right, Ms. Nora.
Well, I started the membership card myself in Marcia, the database. And I sent out cards to every one of the delegates. And I tell you right now, because pastors move so much, they never go back into the database and update their information. So I have so many stamps that have come back to me. That initiative was started as a teamwork between the finance department and the secretary's office. And we worked to get that together, to put that database together, because we had been in Nashville when there was such a long line. And we went to, myself and Marcia went to Dr. Lewis and said, you know, we can stop that line. And when we went to General Conference in 2016 in Philadelphia, we no longer had any lines. But there are perks on that membership card, because once you get something working in the church, a lot of times other people will stop it. And so Dr. Lewis and Dr. Cooper said it was okay right now. Don't work with it anymore. Just keep the database. The database still works because you're still using it to go to the conferences now and the general conference and get your little discount off of it. But there are many more things that are already working with that. But I want you to know that it was myself and Marcia who initiated that project. And I thank Dr. Lewis and Dr. Cooper for allowing us that opportunity.
Well, thank you. Next, of course, ladies first. I know you gentlemen don't mind. Miss Cynthia.
Good evening.
Yes, you have your question. Do you need me to repeat it?
Yes, would you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Okay, so again, there are various phrases that speak to following in the footsteps of our predecessors. So are there any initiatives set forth by your predecessor that, if elected, you will continue?
So I think there are 3 initiatives that I assisted in and worked on that were very impactful to our department. The first one was the Power of a Thinking Church Conference. I think that was absolutely amazing because we were able to gather scholars in one conference to share their research and actually take the research and the theory and translate it into practice that might be used in our local churches. Many people don't know that the AME Church has more scholars than any other denomination. And so in the Power of the Thinking Church Conference, we were able to take the information and actually show appreciation for the research that they did and translate theory into practice. The second thing would be the webinars that we implemented. I was intricate in assisting in writing the compelling preaching grant for the Department of Research and Scholarship. And so given that grant, it not only takes the information from the scholars, but it allows access to information to inform lay members and clergy concerning compelling preaching, concerning elements of lay preaching. And so the grant writing initiatives, the Power of a Thinking Church Conference, and the webinars are 3 things that I would carry with me because they are things that have been impactful to our church thus far.
Thank you for your response.
You're very welcome.
All right. Well, Reverend Dr. Mark Tyler requested to respond to this question.
No, actually, I was just trying to get unmuted because I got home. So
have it locked down here.
Not a problem.
We're
but I
unmuted
will
when we
answer.
say you may be unmuted.
That's all I was asking. But since you opened the floor for me, what I'd say is what I appreciate greatly about the work that Dr. Fry Brown has done is bringing in so many other people to work with her. And so giving them and empowering them, like we just heard Dr. McDonald speak about what she's been able to do there, folk like Dr. Aaron Treadwell and others. So I think what I would like to do is to build upon that and to find persons who are across the connection. I've always had a vision and an idea that we continue to tout that we're 5 continents, 39 nations. So we should have those persons who are there as well, and not just there in name only, but really having some kind of resources as well to begin to collect our history, because our history is not just what happened in America in the AME Church. It's what happened through southern part of Africa, West Africa, the Caribbean, even in Europe. So I would certainly build on that. And I think she's done a great job at setting a good example.
Thank you for your response. All right, Reverend Washington.
Thank you so much, Jameisha. I just want to take this time to thank God for the work of our past 3 secretaries for the AME Church, Bishop Chappelle, Bishop Few, and now Dr. Cooper, who have each been tasked with boldly attacking our membership, trying to really understand who we are as a people, trying to really understand the number of people that we actually have in the AME Church. And what I love about what Dr. Cooper did in the past with the Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Lewis, was the creation of this membership database that they were able to use. And then what Dr. Cooper then did was merge that membership database with a system called ACS. Here's the issue that we're having right now. At present moment, most of our Episcopal districts are not utilizing the ACS system, which means that the Secretary's office, the CIO, has to then take the information that is given from the Episcopal districts and then merge it into a connectional ACS system. What I would like to do if elected the General Secretary of this church is I would like to merge that membership data that we do have from the membership cards along with the ACS system to create what we call a membership portal. That membership portal will then be a system in which all of our components, all of our members would be able to really have a true understanding of the numbers that we possess as AMEs, the database that we have of professionals, of historians, as Dr. Parnell and Dr. Tyler have mentioned, and all of the various entities that we have in the AME Church to better understand our membership. So I want to build upon that that has already been done by my predecessors. So I thank you for that question because I appreciate the work that they have done in the past.
So, thank you so much for that response. Okay. Now for Reverend Blackwell. Here you go. There you go.
I think what I would continue, Dr. Miller working with the Lilly Foundation had worked to get a grant that allowed for the reimbursements or the reduction of ministerial and seminary debt for pastors. And then it kind of expanded from just being about debt to being about some other expenses that pastors have. And so it's expanded over time. If I had to continue one thing, of course, it's depending upon grant funding, but I would certainly want to continue that effort and then expand the stewardship part to go in several different areas, including helping with financial literacy, and then also kind of pointing people to WestPath. That's another thing that was signed up while we were under Dr. Miller. And so with WestPath having so many different resources, just continuing to strengthen that relationship and the utilization of the resources that are available to clergy, financial advisors, and such. So Ministerial Excellence Fund and the resources that are available to us through WestPath.
Thank you, sir. Next. All right, first we'll have Reverend Dr. Mayberry, then we'll come to Reverend Dr. Lamar.
Thank you so much for the question. My predecessor was the late presiding elder Goodwin Douglas. He began something that just made a lot of sense to me, and I continued it. He would bring together all of the young adult members of the committee for lunch. The purpose was to tell them and share with them the process of the committee, to talk a little bit about the history, to help them feel very comfortable with being a part of the committee, not just a young adult member, but a member of the committee. They stopped sitting in the back. They would sit in the front. They would be very engaged in conversations with the bishops of the church who would come in for interviews. And I think that process helped the entire committee because every level of the committee then became a very real part of the work of the Episcopal Committee.
Thank you, sir. All right, Reverend Lamar.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Mayberry stole my thunder. I appreciate that spirit of hospitality for young adults. And I would say another thing that is very apparent is to ensure that our global constituency feels at home. And I think that Dr. Mayberry and other leaders have ensured that we do not, as Americans have, if you have friends who are not from America, they will tell you of the chauvinism that comes with being an American often when we are not in the United States. So ensuring, as he has ensured in his leadership, that the global church understands that we are not America-centered, but we are the global church of Allen. That begins by not using the language of overseas, because what does overseas mean, right? We are overseas from their perspective. So the language of a global church, of an international church that does not center the American imperial way of thinking and being and doing church.
Thank you, sir, for your response. All right. We'll stretch. Take a deep breath. Take a sip of water. This is water. You should get you a large cup because you need to keep it. Stay hydrated for general conference. No fainting, passing out, none of that, okay? All right, thank you. Let's now go to the chat feature. Timothy, you ready?
Yes, I am ready. We have a few questions that were posed in the chat. The first one I see here, directed to the Office of Retirement Services. We have churches of varying sizes. In what ways will you work to ensure that all employed by the AME Church are paid with proper taxes being taken out?
All right. Well, thank you for that question. I would advise all churches, particularly if you do have employees, to operate some kind of payroll system. They do have ones that are relatively inexpensive. Ultimately, the goal would be if the AME Church had one, and then could essentially license it out to some of the to churches to make sure that they were using something that worked. Of course, the danger there is, can they see my information? And so then that kind of limits, us wanting to all go on the same system. But the payroll system itself can actually do all of that for you. And then you don't have to worry about withholding taxes and then paying them later, because I'm telling you, that is a trap. Do not have, and I want to pay the taxes later, have a company take them out as you go, because otherwise we all had churches who've gotten in trouble for taxes. Now, the clergy is slightly different because you aren't required to withhold taxes from clergy, even if they're W-2. So a clergy person may choose to not have withholding, but then at the end of the year find themselves caught in a trick bag. So you certainly don't want that either. But I believe that as a connectional church, we can probably find some system that works and offer it to churches to make sure that they're able to do it. They're able to have the taxes taken out, have all of their quarterly reports filed for the state and for the federal government, so that they don't have to worry about it. I know the one that we use costs $8 a month per person. And so it's affordable, but not having one, you can't afford to not have one and then get in trouble with the IRS.
Thank you so much for that question. For that answer. Let's see. For the historiographer candidates, what are your specific plans to work with the AME Scholars Guild and to publish the AME Review as a part of not just the church's history, but the roles, leadership of the Department of Research and Scholarship. That is for the candidates running for a historiographer.
Oh, so looks like I'm already unmuted. So I'll take a stab at that. Thank you for the question. And so I think the AME Review is an incredible opportunity for the AME Church to hear from our scholars. If you think about when it was founded in the 1800s, for example, we had just very few people who were barely literate, let alone had, possessed what we would call today higher education. Today, the list of AMEs with terminal degrees, AMEs, for example, who have received D-Min degrees, who've done some amazing projects and have written things that often once their D-Min program is finished, no one else hears about unless they work that in their particular congregation. And a lot of that is on a real high scholarly level as well. So I think that what we need to do is just tap back into our own resources and also think about ways in which we can make that easier to access, especially for people who just can't get to a paper book or who don't want a paper book anymore, and to be able to have that as a flip book or something of that nature.
Thank you. Dr. McDonald?
And so given the question, specific plans to work with the AME Scholars Guild and to publish the AME Review, first of all, I think that the AME Review should be digitized. To digitize the AME Review is to make sure that people have access to the AME Review because it is a vital organ of the church. In terms of the AME Scholars Guild, I see it as a dynamic and integral part of the church's intellectual and spiritual community. And so the Scholars Guild, as I envision, is a hub for academic excellence, for research, for scholarship within the AME Church that also aligns with the church's mission and values. What does that look like? That looks like cultivating scholarship. It looks like mentoring and developing and nurturing future scholars. It looks like promoting interdisciplinary dialogue, and it looks like supporting research and publication. We do that as well as take all of those resources to provide continuing education, an online learning platform for continuing education. We do that by developing an online archive of our historical documents. And we do that, as I mentioned, by digitizing the AME Review and making sure to highlight the historical evolution of districts 1 through 20, incorporating all of those diverse voices as a part of our church.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have one in the chat. We often talk about change, but once elected, in many circumstances, we fall into the status quo. How will we keep our commitment to change? For candidates who are seeking re-election, how will you change anything that you have done in the past? Let's see, who is seeking re-election? Dr. Mayberry.
Okay, there we go. Thank you for the question. One of the things that I think is important and that I've attempted to do and will continue to do is prepare people to move into leadership. If you look at the makeup of the leadership of the Episcopal Committee from the last General Conference, newer people were put in positions of leadership, along with some people who had been there, so that there could be that kind of mentorship and preparation for the church and for the committee going forward. I think it is important that we work to make change a real part of the life of the committee, and that's my commitment to continue to do that.
Thank you so much for that answer. And we have one more question directed to
Timothy,
yes.
Dr. Henderson mentioned that he would like to answer that question as well.
Absolutely.
Greetings. I had to chime in on that question. Change is difficult. Everybody wants change until change comes. and then they want it the same way that it was. And that's interesting. I want to be very transparent with everyone on the line. I came in with a lot of changes that I'd like to make. But the truth of the matter is, much like the Titanic, when the Titanic was headed towards that iceberg, they just couldn't change direction that fast. So I think it takes time to do that. And I think as well is that we've got to be, and we use this word a lot, we have to be intentional about the change, not change for change's sake, but change for change reasons. The COVID, the pandemic made us change. Some of us cannot even remember when we were not using Zoom. But all of a sudden, Zoom has become the platform, and Zoom allows us to come together in platforms and relationships such as this. So sometimes, and I think we would all agree, that the change that the church needs has come. Now what we have to do is step in and help those that are around that maybe, oh, that's just too much. Let me give you for instance, right now, we all know that we should not be utilizing paper that much. So we know we got these wonderful devices, we can pull everything up, but you would not believe how many people say, no, we want paper. I need something in my hand. Well, the challenge with that is that that's a very costly factor now that we could easily change the cost of the church, because that's what I do every day. Is I'm looking for more cost-effective ways to get the same job done efficiently and effectively. So once again, that change thing is something that we have to look within, and we have to decide when we see this change come, first of all, do we trust our leaders? Is this a positive change? And then the second thing is, are we willing to do what's necessary to make that change and make it for the betterment of our denomination? So, we could talk all day long about change, because the change is not only happening within our denomination, but the change is happening within our individual lives as well. So just think about how you are handling change. And if you feel like you're doing it efficiently and effectively, that's great. But if I still like my flip phone. I want to have paperwork. Paper in my hand. Then you may be the one that may need to think about how change should come within our denomination, but how it should come within you first. So I appreciate the opportunity to share, and that just is one that I deal with quite a bit, and it's very difficult, but it's one that must occur. God bless.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Henderson. Ms. Nora, we will recognize your hand, and then other candidates, if you're interested in answering or responding to that question, please do so in the chat. All right, Ms. Nora, coming to you, and we'll wrap it up.
I just like to say, I teach a class with my church school superintendents. The first thing I ask them, which is stronger, your urge to grow or your resistance to change? And I say that to each one of you, which is stronger, your urge to grow or your resistance to change? Most times, some people say their urge to grow, other people say their resistance to change. The bottom line is you can't grow without changing, and you can't change without growing. And when you stop fighting within yourself and understand, in order to grow, you must change. And in order to change, you must grow. Then the movement goes forward. So it's really an individual thing. We must learn to accept growth and change.
Absolutely. And so on that note, I would like to just share that this forum came out of a change that we had to pivot. So we initially planned to have 2 to 3 hours in Columbus. Well, we didn't get that. So now we have these virtual forums. And so I really appreciate each candidate for taking time out to share with us this evening your platform, you're following those instructions. I really appreciate that. Staying close to the time, really appreciate that. My fellow moderator, really appreciate you. And I hope all of our viewers were able to capture some of your answers, and I hope it influences them in whatever way the Lord directs. Timothy, we thank you for all of your help with the tech side of things. Appreciate it. And let's see what else. Oh, stay tuned, because on August 15th, we will have part 2 with what am I trying to say? Featuring our candidates for the episcopacy. And then on the 25th of August, we'll have an in-person soiree. Nothing too formal, more like a speed dating event, but more details are coming. So stay tuned for that. Us young adults have a lot of tricks up our sleeves, so be prepared. All right. If you have any further responses, please share those in the chat. And I think that's all, folks. We thank you, candidates. We know it's late, and we appreciate the sacrifice of time for all of you coming out. Y'all take care. Drink your water. It's important.